For the last 2 years or so, anybody with $900 to spend on a soundbar will be thinking about the Sonos Arc Gen 1 on its own, or getting the Sonos Beam Gen 2 with a Sub Mini. So if you are trying to make the decision today, check out this video that I've made about a year ago. And I rewatched it and I still find it relevant today in choosing between the Arc Gen 1 and the Sonos Beam Gen 2 with the Sub Mini. Now, very soon, this decisioning tree will change and it will fork, presenting you with an even tougher decision. Now, the Sonos Arc Gen 2 is rumored to be announced within the next 2 months or so, superseding the Arc Gen 1. Now, in the last video that I made, I covered the huge internal upgrade that the Sonos Arc Gen 2 will bring with regards to the drivers using the Meyer technology, which Sonos acquired 2 years ago. Now, if you have not watched that video, you might want to bookmark this video first, check out that video, and come back to this after. So before you go on to the rest of the video, the quick answer to the question posted in this video is that you absolutely need to wait for the next Sonos Arc Gen 2 to be announced before making the final decision to buy anything within the next 2 months. Even if none of the features I'm going to be talking about today materializes, just the upgraded sound from incorporating the Meyer technology alone will justify an upgrade or the purchase of the Arc Gen 2. Now, the decision that you have to make over the next 2 months will no longer be between the Sonos Arc Gen 1 or the Beam Gen 2 with the Sub Mini, because the Arc Gen 2 itself should produce enough bass on its own to do away with the subwoofer. Yes, it's possibly that good with the Meyer technology. Meyer technology is supposed to drive like 8-inch woofer kind of sound with just a 3.5-inch drivers. But sound quality is not the only thing that will be considered when making a soundbar purchase. The features, it needs to be considered too. Now, in today's video, I will go beyond the groundbreaking changes to the drivers that the Sonos Arc Gen 2 is going to bring. Now, even if they introduce the Arc Gen 2 with just the Meyer driver, that alone can make the decision simpler, right? It sounds better, just buy that. Yes? No? Well, no. Stay on to the rest of the video and I'll be going through the possible upgraded features that the Sonos Arc Gen 2 is going to launch with. Now, at this point, you have to understand that Sonos is being tight-lipped about what the Sonos Arc Gen 2 is going to bring. In fact, they have not even said that they're going to launch the Sonos Arc Gen 2. Well, most of the features that I'm talking about today are speculative in nature, and you can say that it's like a wish list. I've made wish lists for Sonos 4 years ago, and Sonos has implemented about half of those over the years, including the dual sub support. So comment down below on what you want out of the Sonos Arc Gen 2, and maybe someone at Sonos is listening and they can really consider what we want out of the next gen Sonos Arc. Now, at the end of the video, I will also go through what Sonos probably will not bring to the table with the Sonos Arc Gen 2. So before we hit that bonus content, let's talk through 10 features which I think Sonos should bring to the table with the Arc Gen 2 to ensure that it remains the top soundbar of choice over the next 4 years. I've broken down the features into confirmed changes, high probability, low probability, and also medium probability changes. So the first that I'll go in, confirmed changes. There are two here. Physical dimensions. Now, the weight is likely to be much heavier than the Sonos Arc Gen 1 that I have here. The size and dimension, it probably won't change much. So volumetric shipping, well, based on the dimension, it probably will still stay the same, but the weight will increase. Why? Because the Meyer drivers are supposed to be using rare earth magnets, which will make the speaker cones heavier. So even if they pack the same 11 drivers in the Arc Gen 2 as the same as the Gen 1, it should weigh significantly more. But in terms of fitting into your house, it shouldn't matter much, because at 114 centimeters long, the Sonos Arc is already quite long, and it will probably suit a 65-inch TV and above. And we don't want it to get a lot bigger. It shouldn't look like the Nakamichi Dragon. It shouldn't look like some of the big-ass soundbars, which doesn't look like soundbars. It basically just looks like bookshelf speakers lying on the side. Now, in terms of design, there will be a refreshed design. Now, bear in mind that when Sonos Beam Gen 1 went to the Sonos Beam Gen 2, there was hardly any changes. The grille got changed, it got updated from a cloth to a polycarbonate grille, and for the Sonos Arc Gen 2, it is actually pretty in line even with the ERA 300 that was launched a while ago. So in terms of design that will be refreshed, you are still going to be limited to white and black, which will go in line with all the other speakers that Sonos is making. No new colorway. The volume control, on the other hand, will no longer be just tap. It will follow the volume control, the sliding volume control that is launched with the Sonos ERA 100 and the ERA 300, which then went on to the Sonos Move 2 as well. So externally, it wouldn't look very drastically different. Design language is going to feel very familiar. It must go with the ERA 100 and the ERA 300 and possibly the ERA 500 that might be launched. Alright, so I've covered these two confirmed changes, and these are all physical changes to the soundbar. Now, what are the high probability changes? So there are a couple of things that will definitely be very high on the probability list, which includes the internals of this. Now, all soundbars will require a processor, and they require RAM, and there is a Wi-Fi chip inside. Now, over the years, the CPU will definitely get a little bit faster. The Gen 1 has a quad-core 1.4 GHz CPU inside, and it has some amount of RAM, and all that is sufficient for today, right? Because we're not processing DTSX, we're not processing really, really high bandwidth kind of sound and graphics and video. But as time goes by, it will get actually cheaper to buy into higher capacity memory chips as well as faster chips because of the economies of scale. That's where the market has moved. In fact, if you wanted to keep the same 1.4 GHz processor, you probably have to spend more to find those rare to find parts. So this is a natural progression of time. They will probably make more use of the CPU, the faster speed, as well as the more RAM. And Wi-Fi 6 was introduced with the ERA series of speakers, so that will definitely come to the Arc Gen 2. The second thing will be the USB-C port. So the Arc Gen 2 will likely feature a USB-C port, and they will actually remove the Ethernet port. But it does mean that it will come with line-in capabilities, which is big because none of the current soundbars from Sonos actually has a line-in port. So to have that, right, which you can actually enable by just buying a dongle for the ERA 100 and the ERA 300, but now you can actually do it for the Sonos Arc Gen 2 as well. The next thing is Bluetooth. So Bluetooth was enabled, so basically all the portable speakers, the Sonos Roam 2, the Sonos Move 2, including the Sonos Ace headphones, they are all operating on Bluetooth. The ERA 100 and ERA 300 also has Bluetooth enabled without any dongle. It's just built in already. So that is something that the Sonos Arc Gen 2 will likely bring to the table. Next will be TruePlay. Now, TruePlay has been contentious for a while. TruePlay was previously only available to iOS, Apple ecosystem users. The Android users didn't have it. But for the ERA 100 and the ERA 300, they have a quick TruePlay, which does not depend on the phone anymore. It will use its internal mics to actually measure out. So likely that is a feature that will come to the Sonos Arc Gen 2 as well. Now, all these are the high probability ones. There are medium probability changes that, or rather features that Sonos is likely to bring. Now, Apple, in June this year, they announced that they are going to support spatial audio over AirPlay 2. So with the better processor, more RAM, basically higher spec internals for the Sonos Arc Gen 2, it is likely that Sonos might actually just support spatial audio, Atmos audio, over AirPlay 2. Again, this will be specific to iOS device user. Chromecast doesn't support that right now, and hopefully, I don't know, Metacast, which is a new standard and they're trying to rectify it across the industry, hopefully that changes things and it evens the playing field for Android and iOS users. So the next medium probability will be the Wi-Fi integration for two Sonos Ace headphones. So currently, if you use a Sonos Ace headphone, you can swap the sound from your soundbar to the Sonos Ace, but only one pair of headphones at a time. One pair as in one headphone, right? So if your partner or anybody you are watching with, you want to have the sound come to both headsets, it actually is not supported. So not sure whether it's a limitation of the Wi-Fi chip with it inside the current soundbars, or maybe it's the processor difference. But if you are able to upgrade both of these components, maybe that is something that can be integrated. I cannot imagine why Sonos would sell a pair in fact, accept two Sonos A's as an option on their website and not support both streaming at the same time from the same source. Now, I will next go into the low probability features that they may actually implement in the Sonos Arc Gen 2. Now, something that I've been asking for many years now is the ability to cast channel sounds to individual speakers, including the heights channel, right? So I actually do have ceiling speakers built in here. These are the Sonos speakers. They are hooked up to my Sonos amp. And what I really want Sonos to do is for the ability to have the Sonos Arc Gen 2 cast the sound to the Sonos amp to put out the Atmos sound through actual in-ceiling speakers. Right now, there are two upward firing speakers in the Sonos Arc, another pair of upward firing speakers in the ERA 300, and it gives you the 0.4, right? You have four upward reflected channels of heights effects. But what I really want is for the sound to actually come from the top, and that is a good time for me to use the Sonos amp and drive the Sonos speakers, which are very underused at the moment. The next low probability feature will be HDMI switching. Now, if you flip to the back of the Sonos Arc, you will see that there's only one HDMI port, and that is a HDMI ERA port, which means to say it will take the input from a TV. Anything that's playing on your TV will get cast as a sound here. So if you have an external player, or you have a couple of external players like NVIDIA Shield or the Apple TV or another Blu-ray player, you will not be able to actually switch via the Sonos Arc. You actually have to go through the TV, and whatever is pumped to the TV will come back here. Now, that presents a couple of problems because some TVs do not support eARC, right? And some TVs only support ARC, which is a compressed bandwidth form of Atmos. It won't give you the best quality. Now, what I want in this is to have a couple more ports. So yes, you can have your eARC port, but you can also have two more ports, for example, to hook up your Blu-ray player and an Apple TV or the NVIDIA Shield, such that the sound will come here directly, as well as the Sonos Arc, then passing the video to the screen. So the whole synchronization will be perfect and you will have no lip sync issue. Whether Sonos will do that or not, it is pretty doubtful, because I do believe that Sonos is trying to keep things simple and they don't want so many ports, and the fact that you have more ports means the higher probability of someone connecting the wrong port and not getting the right effects. So as a form of bonus content for this video, I'd like to talk about things that Sonos Arc Gen 2 will unlikely bring to the table. So one thing that a lot of people have been asking about, well, not a lot, but I do hear it quite a bit over the years, is DTS-X support or DTS HD support. The Sonos Arc actually supports DTS, right? But that is just multi-channel sound, and it is the compressed form. It is not the full uncompressed version of DTS-X or DTS HD. Now, if you are watching Blu-ray or DVDs which has DTS-X output, you won't be able to get the best sound quality. So there are users who are asking for it, but I understand that DTS-X will actually require licensing and you have to pay more. So if, let's say, 90% of the Sonos Arc users aren't using that, Sonos wouldn't incorporate that and pay royalty for everything and charge everybody more, such that the 90% is sponsoring the 10% for their capability. But at the very least, I think Sonos can actually make that kind of like a paid upgrade or an option for anyone who uses it to actually purchase the license for the Sonos Arc Gen 2 that they are buying in. Capability-wise, hardware-wise, there's no reason why the Sonos Arc Gen 2 will not be able to support that. Well, the next unlikely implementation is the support for Sub Gen 4. Not a feature of the Sonos Arc on its own, because any sub that Sonos releases will have to be supported across all the soundbars, but there could be further integration. For example, the Sub Gen 4 should be using the Mayov drivers as well, so it will probably allow it to punch deeper. So if paired with a soundbar that is also utilizing the Mayov drivers, they may be able to change the crossover point such that you will divert more energy to the Sub Gen 4, which may be similar size as the current Sub Gen 3, but punch out a lot more bass, a lot deeper and a lot harder. So could the Sub Gen 4 be launched together with the Sonos Arc Gen 2? I don't know. Could there be an ERA 500 on the horizon? I don't know too. But in June of 2020, they actually launched the Sonos Arc, they launched the Sonos Sub Gen 3, and they launched the Sonos Suffice at the same time. Now, Is there a possibility that they're going to launch towards the end of the year the Arc Gen 2, the Sonos Sub Gen 4, as well as the ERA 500? I don't know, it begs to be seen. But even if you add a modest $100 increase to each of these components that is being upgraded, you're going to end up spending more than $3,000. And if you go for a dual sub setup, buying 2 Sub Gen 4, you are going to be spending more than $4,000, which is basically the Nakamichi Dragon pricing. Well, that's all I have for the Sonos Arc Gen 2 at this point in August of 2024. If I hear any more, I will release videos on the progress, but you can be sure that I will cover the announcement and subsequent reviews. So if you're not already subscribed to my channel, now will be a great time to do so. So between now and the launch of the Sonos Arc Gen 2, check out some of my videos on my channel. If you're adamant about buying a soundbar right away, see the video comparing the Sonos Beam Gen 2 and the Sonos Arc Gen 1. Or if you already have a Sonos Arc, check out how you can optimize the utility from it by making it sound better in this video right here. And I'll see you in one of these videos.